Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing Episode 92, Stage Fight. The episode begins with Ash and the gang already on another island this time, and when they arrive on the island, they immediately are in the island's harbor, where they spot a huge-ass cruise ship that has a Pokemon show going on. A Pokemon show, as the name suggests, was essentially a performance or a show put on just with Pokemon actors. And the cruise ship acted as a huge-ass theater. Ash and the gang were excited by the prospect of an all-Pokemon show, and wanted to go see it, so they decided to climb aboard the ship, known as the Pokemon Showboat. As soon as they arrived, the show had already begun, and it was a boxing match between a Machoke and a Hitmonchan. Obviously a fictional one, as you know, it was a show. But regardless, the fight still ended in the Hitmonchan's victory, with an Abra, who was the referee, declaring that Machoke was unable to battle. Hitmonchan then proceeded to celebrate as its girlfriend, a Clefable, ran up to hug the Hitmonchan. The audience all cheered at this, celebrating the Hitmonchan's victory, and Ash and the gang cheered as well. But due to being distracted by how entertaining the show was, as well as the sheer fact that other Pokemon, aside from Meowth, could talk, as that's right, all of the Pokemon involved in the show were talking, they didn't initially realize Togepi wander off. Thankfully, with Misty being Togepi's mother, she does eventually realize and questions Ash and Tracy where Togepi went off to, and then they all suddenly look toward the stage to see Togepi running backstage, and immediately they all go after it. Well, I shouldn't say immediately, as Tracy took a while, as he was too busy drawing the Pokemon in his sketches, but eventually he caught up, and the entire gang caught up to Togepi, who was looking to go from the backstage up onto the actual stage and join the Pokemon in the performance, but fortunately, Misty grabbed it and stopped it in time. However, while they were backstage, they then noticed three people standing at microphones and saying the exact same things that the Pokemon were saying on stage. Tracy realized that this was because these people were actually giving the Pokemon their voices and making it seem like the Pokemon were talking when they in fact weren't. It should have been obvious that they weren't talking. Meowth is obviously a special case. Although maybe these people should have made it more obvious, as now they could probably be liable for a lawsuit. Like, you're claiming that these Pokemon can talk on their own, and that entices people to come to your shows, and yet you're actually the ones talking for them. But anyways, Ash and the gang were a little too loud when they were pointing this out, so a girl walks up to them and tells them how they weren't allowed to be backstage, and if they were going to be backstage, maybe don't be so goddamn loud. Ash tries to defend himself, with Pikachu jumping in to try and support Ash, and this leads the girl to state how close Ash and Pikachu must be, and indicating that she was a little jealous of their connection. I wonder why. Before Ash or the girl could say anything more, their voices were then drowned out by the cheers of the crowd as the show ended with the Pokemon dancing on stage. A lot of Pokemon were needed as extra dancers for this scene, beyond even the main stars of the show. So one of the main actors that provided their voice for the Pokemon, named Roger, went up to the girl, whose name was Kay, and asked her to send out her Raichu so that they could have some backup dancers. However, Kay stated that her Raichu was nowhere to be found, and she couldn't find it. Suddenly, though, the Raichu then appeared from behind a box backstage, but still refused to go on stage, having a very, very, very sad look on its face, and appearing to be scared. Even when Kay politely asked it to go on stage, it still absolutely refused. This led Ash and the gang to come to the conclusion that Kay and her Raichu must not get along very well. For one, Raichu didn't obey Kay, and secondly, Kay didn't even know where Raichu was at the beginning. The show unfortunately ended without Raichu going on stage. And Ash and the gang then asked Roger if he could take them to the next island using the showboat, since the showboat wasn't being used for a show currently. Roger thankfully agrees, and they begin their trek to Canoe Island. I think the Lapras would probably be faster than the boat, no, but whatever. The next day, Ash and the gang were still on the boat, and they had went out to the deck first thing in the morning to ask Roger if there was any chores they could do in exchange for him taking them to Canoe Island. Even though there certainly was chores they could do, Roger was in the middle of sweeping the deck right now. He responded that he didn't want Ash and the gang to do any chores, but rather help Kay form a better bond with her Raichu, as he knew that Kay and Raichu weren't in sync and didn't properly understand each other, and he wanted them to be able to so that they could perform in the shows. Kay then also asked Ash to help her, stating the reason why, as him having such a good connection with his Pikachu, she thought that he could help her with her Raichu. So, Ash agreed, but it seemed that Kay and Roger were the only ones that thought that Ash could be of assistance, as Misty, on the other hand, did not think that Ash would be able to be a successful teacher of anything. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was spying on the Pokemon Showboat in their Magikarp sub, and they saw all the posters on it that were advertising the Pokemon shows. This led Jessie to get excited about the fact that it meant that there were Pokemon on board. However, James and Meowth were more excited on the show aspect and imagined themselves getting to do a magic show. However, Jessie soon hit them with her fan to eliminate their fantasies and reminded them of the importance of stealing Pokemon, not doing fucking shows. She manages to entice James into wanting to steal the Pokemon when she reminds him of if they gave all the Pokemon to Giovanni, then Giovanni would give them a lot of promotions or bonuses in return, even though he's never fucking done that before. But Meowth, on the other hand, he was still sad, as he cared more about the shows than anything still. Regardless, they all pedaled immensely fast to make sure that they could keep up with the Pokemon Showboat, determined now to steal the Pokemon. Meanwhile, Ash was on the stage, attempting to help Kay with her Raichu, and he was doing so to the best of his ability by repeating everything that Brock had told him about Pokemon bonds, as well as the things that he had learned about his bond with Pikachu. Tracy's in amazement at the amount that Ash seemed to know about Pokemon bonds, believing him to be kind of an idiot, as he always seemed to rush into situations and never actually, use his head, but Misty then revealed that most of what he was saying was just regurgitated from everything Brock had said. But hey, I think it still counts. That's like saying if you were taught something by a teacher, then you couldn't teach it to somebody else. Like what? Also, Brock mentioned let's go. Anyways, after Ash explains all of Brock's teachings to Kay, he decides to test out if they really worked by instructing her to begin performing something with her Raichu. So, she decides to recite a poem, but unfortunately, Raichu refuses, as usual, to join in. She practically just begs him at this point to do something, and he only sparks his tail in response, to act as a defense mechanism in case Kay tried to force itself on her. The spark only ends up affecting Ash, though, as Ash goes up to Raichu and tries to encourage it to do something, giving it words of encouragement. However, he gets shocked in response, due to putting his hand on Raichu's head. Ash is okay, though, as he's experienced many shocks before, which definitely surprises Kay, because she's like, I think you should be dead after a shock like that. Anyways, with both Kay and Ash failing, this meant that Raichu was still just sitting there, looking as sad as usual, refusing to do anything, and Kay was very depressed by this herself, as later that night, she was just sitting out on the boat, depressed that her Raichu wouldn't listen to her. Ash then came up to her, though, and suggested that maybe the reason was because Raichu was simply afraid of her. It was then that Kay revealed that she actually knew the reason why Raichu didn't want to perform. She just didn't want to accept it, as she blamed it on herself. Because the reason why Raichu wouldn't perform wasn't because it was scared of her, but because she was initially scared of it. Because when she first got Raichu was so excited to meet her that it shocked her when they first touched. Kay was so traumatized and frightened by the shock that she immediately pushed Raichu away in fear to the ground, knocking it over and injuring it. She then explains that since that day, she's been absolutely terrified of getting shocked, and the Raichu is able to sense her fear of it, so that's why it never wants to do anything with her, as it fears that it would hurt her. Essentially, Raichu wasn't scared of Kay, it was scared of hurting Kay. That's the short version. Kay then clarifies that she's been trying her absolute best to get over her fear of being shocked, and would like to give Raichu another chance, and she just hoped that Raichu would let her. Ash comforts her as Misty and Tracy and Roger eavesdrop from the side of the ship, with Misty remarking how Ash seemed to be better at motivational speeches and encouraging people with kind words, as opposed to teaching people. Just then, Team Rocket in their Magikarp sub approach the ship and fire a torpedo at it in an attempt to destroy it, to free the Pokemon from there so that they could more easily take them, and as a result, this torpedo causes the ship to rattle and scare the Raichu, while also knocking Ash and Kay down on the floor in the process. Ash and Kay then get up and run to the top deck of the ship, thinking that was where Roger was supposed to be, but instead, they just find Raichu, being as scared as it was, curled up, hiding between some crates with its tail sparking immensely. Kay goes to run up to the Raichu to comfort it as Team Rocket shoot a second torpedo at the ship, which unfortunately manages to hit all the crates around Raichu, destroying them and sending Raichu flying. But thankfully, Kay is able to catch it as she was running up and managed to get up to it in time. As a result of being scared, Raichu shocks Kay, even though it obviously didn't want to, but Kay reassures the Raichu that it was okay and that she wouldn't hold it against it this time, as she had gotten over her fear of being shocked. Yay, Raichu and Kay were gonna get along now. Ash and Pikachu then arrive to check up on Kay and Raichu to make sure they weren't seriously injured, with Kay simply questioning where all these torpedo explosions were coming from. Just then, Team Rocket show up in full-on pirate outfits and do their motto, revealing their plan to try and steal all the Pokemon off the boat, threatening that if they didn't get the Pokemon, then they would blow up the ship with a bomb. Ash instantly refuses, insisting that he would battle Team Rocket, but Roger tells him not to take the risk and simply comply with giving the Pokemon, as they could replace the Pokemon, but not the boat. What the fuck, dude? That's fucked up. Like, yeah, I know you could get new Pokemon, but, you could just pay for a new boat as well. I'm sure your shows are successful enough. Unfortunately, though, Ash complies with Roger's request and allows themselves to all get tied up by Team Rocket, allowing them to take the Pokemon. However, when Meowth attempts to steal Raichu, he makes fun of it for how sad it looked, and this causes the Raichu to shock the Meowth as revenge. However, Jesse and James were still entirely kicking, and Meowth quickly got back up, so Raichu really did nothing in the end. I guess he was at least able to create a good enough distraction so that Ash and the gang, along with all of the voice actors, could move over. Even while fucking being trapped in the rope still, they were able to move over to the curtain backstage where the Pokemon were and watch everything else unfold. I don't know how the fuck they were able to move while being tied up, but hey. While behind the curtain, the actors get the idea to voice their Pokemon in an attempt to confuse Team Rocket, as they wouldn't know the truth and just be confused as to why Pokemon could talk. So, the actors proceed to go through with this plan as Hitmonchan tries to intimidate James, but then looks at the curtain and sees Roger, who was mouthing for him to go into acting mode. So, Hitmonchan obliged, simply standing in front of James, saying absolutely nothing as Roger talked, which of course implied that Hitmonchan could talk. Hitmonchan then punched James as Roger said that Team Rocket would never be able to beat him, implying that that's what Hitmonchan said. It's hard to tell if James is more in shock at the sudden punch or at the fact that Hitmonchan could seemingly talk, but he eventually does in fact believe that Hitmonchan could talk, as all the other Pokemon begin to seemingly talk as well, due to their actors also voicing over them. Jesse and James end up getting so distracted by the Pokemon being able to talk that it allows the Pokemon to all corner them. However, Meowth wasn't just distracted, it actually felt bad for all the Pokemon thinking that they could talk, as he himself, being a talking Pokemon, knew the constant discrimination that these Pokemon must face. Jesse gets mad at Meowth for taking the Pokemon that they were trying to capture's side, and this just results in Team Rocket being even further distracted, allowing the Pokemon to take their chance to attack, with Hitmonchan going for a Fire Punch on James. He's unfortunately able to put the fire out by running around for a bit, however, and sends out his Victory Bell in an attempt to counter the Hitmonchan, but James just has even further bad luck, as Victory Bell, of course, eats him, as always. He's fucking done at this point. He's like, why do I even bother sending out Victory Bell? I should obviously just go with Weezing. And he does, as Weezing uses Smog, which spreads smoke everywhere, making all the Pokemon cough. Unfortunately, Team Rocket managed to cough as well, as they're affected by their own smoke. Fucking idiots. Ash and the gang then used the distraction of the smoke, which had now reached them at that point, to break free from the ropes, as they weren't affected by the smoke, as they had done the smart thing and plugged their noses and covered their mouths. Now, if only Team Rocket thought of that, being the ones to actually fire the smoke. Fucking idiots, man. There's so much fucking stupid moments in this episode. Anyways, after breaking free from the ropes, Misty goes to guard all the actors to make sure nothing bad would happen to them, and Ash and Tracy go to confront Team Rocket. Team Rocket, however, are too busy recalling Weezing into its Pokeball to get rid of the smoke that they aren't able to fight back, as Ash has Pikachu use Thunderbolt, and Tracy has his Meryl use Water Gun in order to knock Team Rocket into a wall. Misty, meanwhile, had helped all the voice actors officially get untied from the ropes, even though the ropes clearly weren't a hindrance to them, as they were still able to voice their Pokemon. But, with them officially being fully free, they can now go up to their Pokemon, including Kay, who immediately goes up to her Raichu, and proceeds to hug it in joy that it was safe, which solidifies the fact that she was no longer scared of touching Raichu. And Raichu finally realizes this, as it feared that when it shocked her back when the Sharpedos attacked, that it had caused her fear to relapse. But now, it knew this wasn't the case, so there was nothing stopping it from working with Kay. So, it and Kay teamed up to unleash a massive Mega Punch attack on Team Rocket, and with the help of Pikachu's Thunder, it was enough to send them blasting off. Everyone applauded in amazement, even all the other Pokemon, in shock at the sheer power a bonded Kay and Raichu had, as they had never seen it before. With Team Rocket dealt with, the showboat experienced no other interruptions as it arrived at both it and Ash and the gang's next destination island. Ash and the gang immediately got off of the showboat and saw several people lined up to go on and watch the show, happy that Kay and her Raichu would finally be able to shine in this one. While Ash and the gang were still at the port of the island, Ash took the opportunity to use one of its computers to phone Professor Oak and tell him all about the Pokemon showboat. Right as Ash hanged up, though, with Oak promising to eventually go see it, Kay then ran up to Ash and the gang, informing them that something had happened to Roger. Kay then leads Ash and the gang back onto the showboat, and they go backstage to check on Roger, where he reveals that he couldn't perform because his throat was severely injured by Team Rocket's smog attack from yesterday, stating that the show would have to be cancelled in that case. However, Raichu then jumped up and down excitedly, pointing to Kay, insinuating that it really wanted to go up with Kay and perform, and believed that Kay could just take Roger's place, as Kay didn't have a spot in this show, as she was actually revealed as only an actor in training. Roger, wanting to see more of Kay and Raichu's bond in action, decides to let Raichu and Kay take his place in the play, with Ash and the gang deciding to help as well. The episode ends with Raichu and Pikachu beginning to sing the main Pokemon theme song on stage, with all the other Pokemon soon joining them, with Ash and Kay and all the other voice actors obviously voice acting, and Tracy and Misty helping with the confetti effects. The crowd cheers loudly, still not knowing the fact that the Pokemon couldn't in fact talk. Man, what a fucking scam.